Hello and welcome to Life on a Mexican Beach. This is a new reality TV series that is going to be interviewing people that live here in Nayarit, Mexico, and talking about their lifestyle and what it means to live life on a Mexican beach. Join us every week as we talk about the cost of living, we talk about medical care. We talk about what it's like to actually live in a remote location, or what is it like to live in a vibrant city like Puerto Vallarta. So check in every week and we'll be telling you all about what life is like living on a beach in Mexico. Hello, this is Julianne, and I have a very special guest with me today. It is Suki a la Soleil, and she is in Oaxaca, Mexico. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I am coming to you from Oaxaca, Mexico, and it's a pleasure to be on your show. So I'm excited to chat with you about how we got here and kind of the journey.
Yes, and we are collecting stories like yours, and of course, your story is very unique. So tell us, how did you end up there and why there?
Okay, so I'm going to take you back. We started, so I have 3 children right now. Their age is 28, I think. I think she's 28. Yes, she had a birthday last week, so she's 28. So we have 28, 22, and 10. And I think it was in 2012. I don't know, we just kind of thought we had a business, we had a tutoring business. And tutoring only goes on during the year. So we thought, you know what, let's just go with the kids and go to another country. So we ended up going to Quito, Ecuador. And Quito was beautiful. A little colder than I probably imagined. The plane ride coming in, they changed things now, but back then it was the shortest runway in the world.
Oh, wow.
So you're coming in and it was like drop, and they just
Wow.
dropped you on the runway and they slammed on the brakes, and it was like, oh, this is amazing. As a first I'm looking at the kids and I'm like, you're gonna live, and they're looking at me like, what kind of mother is this? So, but we made it. And that was the beginning of our journey. And that was such a profound beginning for us because we learned a lot of lessons at that point. Fortunately, we had travel insurance because it turns out my older son suffers from altitude sickness, which we didn't know. Quito's got one of the highest altitudes in the world.
Oh, wow.
So we come off the plane and he just drops. So I'm thinking it's the food, and I'm berating him. I'm like, look, I told you don't eat that airplane food. I told you we'll eat when we get there. Look at you now, and I'm really thinking it's just maybe food poisoning. So we get to our space, and he's just not better. So we immediately took him to the nearest hospital. The care was excellent. I mean, it
Wow.
was just outstanding. He had his own private room. He had a nurse coming in every couple hours. And it got to the point on day 2 where we started to get a little worried, my husband and I, because we're like, oh, this feels like a bill. And he was so happy. He's got the oxygen going through him. He's leaning back on the bed. He's being served all day. So he is in a place of joy and happiness. No intention of leaving. But by day 3, we're like, look, we might have to cross a border. We don't know how much this is going to cost because we're coming from the United States,
Right.
where the costs are pretty high. And we knew we had to pay up front. So then we start talking to the people in the billing office, and very Latin America-like, they were like, don't worry, it's okay. And we were like, no, we're worried. There's a number on the credit cards where it just won't go through. So at some point, we need to figure this out. So I think it was day 4 when finally we told him, look, we're coming home because we don't know what this bill is going to be. So anyway, the bill ended up being $2,400. I cried tears of joy because really the private room and the food and the TV and the nurse and the
Yes.
doctors, in my mind, it was $10,000. I
Yes,
was like,
right.
this is a bill. And I paid that bill with joy and happiness. We couldn't stay in Quito because he legitimately couldn't breathe. So we ended up taking a bus to Cuenca. Beautiful, beautiful city. Love Cuenca still to this day. And we had some challenges on the way. So the bus ride, my husband's idea, won't do it again. I now fly between the cities. He was like, let's just take a bus. And I was like, okay, I guess, my first bus in Latin America. It was a nighttime bus, and I had been reading reports that were like, hey, things happen on buses. And so I wasn't sure. So I was awake, and I sat in the front because I was like, I need to be there for the bus driver,
Right.
right?
In case he
Anything, I
falls
need
asleep or anything,
anything.
right?
Yeah. If he needs somebody to talk to, whatever, I'm here for him. He needs a drink. I am here to provide whatever he needs to make sure that our journey is one that makes sense. So we start driving, everybody else falls asleep. Not my son, but my son, because he's suffering from the altitude sickness, he's actually throwing up. So it was pretty like yucky. I have the whole bag and he's like throwing up in the bag because we end up going higher to even get out of Quito.
Oh, okay.
We're on the bus and they start playing The Equalizer, which is a pretty violent movie.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, oh, there are children. It wasn't just my children on the bus. There were like all these other kids. And
Right.
I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. Yeah, there are children on this bus, and we are just slashing and, the level of violence that I've just not
Oh,
seen. So I told my own kids, I was like, look, please close your eyes because we can't, I don't know what's going on here, but we can't do this. So they end up going to sleep and I watch. And we get to one point where the bus driver and his helper come out of the bus. They go to the statue of Mary and they start praying before we go up the mountain. So
wow.
now I'm like, well, why are you praying? Don't, don't you do this? I don't understand. I can't imagine that this requires prayer for us to go up the mountain. It definitely required prayer. The roads were icy, no side rails. I was looking down on the clouds, so it was like we were above them, and I'm looking
Wow.
down. So we were just so high. So I probably aged 10 years that night.
Oh my gosh.
It was just harrowing, it was freezing. And I told my husband, never again. Like, I'm doing the arrangements for the places. We're just not doing that because that bus ride was not the bus ride to take. So I tell you that story because that actually informs kind of our later journey. So over time, I kind of have a list of what I need when I travel. I
Right.
need to know where the closest hospitals are. I need to know, it doesn't, at this point, it doesn't matter if they speak English for me, but at the time, English would have been, is nice.
Yes.
I need to know where the closest police station is, just so I know, truthfully, I know it doesn't mean kind of that much. And I need someone or something wherever I stay to kind of have a pulse and a beat to where it is that I am.
Right. Right.
One thing that we had in Quito was the woman that we were staying with. She was very, very helpful. She was like, hey, the hospital's here and there. So it kind of informed my list for later on. So we would go on and continue traveling for the next decade. And in the midst of this, son number 3 is born. And so when he's born, he just is born right into our traveling. So he gets used to being a suitcase kid, where any place for 6 months, and he would start asking us, where are we going next, mommy? Like, he was ready to pack a suitcase.
Where was he actually born?
So he was born in the United States,
Okay.
and then we went to Panama 6 months later.
Okay. Wow.
So he grew up going to different schools, and he's a very adaptable child.
Mm-hmm.
So it never bothered him if he didn't quite understand what people were saying. It's just never been a thing for him. He's a people-oriented person. So we would just go from place to place, and he just completely went with the flow. It
Wow.
was no bother for him whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think he was about 6, because I think he's 10 now, he's gonna be 11. So I think he was 6 or 7. And we said to ourselves, he's so ready to go to another place, and he doesn't build any like friends or foundation. And we were like, we probably need to pick a place and at least give him, 5 years to a decade of a foundational place.
Right. Right.
So we started looking for our foundational place. And by this time, I think we were in Medellin, Colombia. And we pretty much thought that area was it.
Right.
The weather is beautiful. If you've ever been to Medellin, you'll know it is so clean, and my husband loves that. The cleanliness is ridiculous. Before COVID, they were washing hands every second. The
Wow.
children looked clean. Even the barbershop. I dropped my husband off at the barbershop. It was a full man grooming. They massage your face and your neck, and it's like a 2-hour thing. I'd have to leave him. I'd be like, look, I'm coming back because I don't have time to sit here and wait for this whole man grooming thing that you've got going. And it was just what people did. So we found a trilingual school in Sabaneta. It was everything was all laid out. And so we came back to the United States only to send my older son off to college. Because we had kept our house the entire time. So we were kind of doing 6 months in, 9 months, 6 months, 3 months in the States, and then 9 months out.
I'm sure
So
that
we
must
get,
be one of the things that a lot of people think about. Should I keep my house, and do I
yes,
rent it? And I mean do you still have your house now, or
I do,
right?
and I rent it. So I would say that in the beginning, it was good that I didn't necessarily rent it, because what I needed to figure out was, and I need to know the rules, right? In order to be a resident of any state, you've got, at least in the state that I was in, you have to be physically in the state 182 days.
Oh,
And you needed to be in the state 182 days if you wanted your children to be able to do any schooling.
oh,
We had him go to North Carolina virtual school. So we were able to do that because we physically stayed in the States for the 182 days. And then we,
wow.
we left more completely when he graduated. But if you have children, there's a good idea for that. But I'm going to tell you, there's a second really good reason for that. So I'm part of a group called People Like Us. It's a home exchange group. And basically what people do in this group is they will actually exchange homes to travel.
Cool.
So if you keep your house, you can still exchange dates all over the world. Like if you don't have a specific place you want to go and you're just like, look, I'm open to anywhere, obviously depending on where your house is, but they have some beautiful houses on these as well. People are very flexible. And so you can actually use your home as the foundation for your traveling and checking out different places.
Wow, that's
So
amazing resource. People like us.
yes, it's called PLU, and it's a home exchange.
Wow.
And it's really excellent. I think it's only like $99 a year, so it's really worth the program and the process, and particularly as being here in Mexico, because as you know, I have a home here in Mexico, I'm able to do the same thing. Since I have 4 apartments, I can exchange out any of my apartments to travel anywhere.
Wow.
So
So is
next
that how
summer,
you're
yeah.
in Osaka, Oaxaca right now? You're on a home
No,
exchange, or
no, I live in Oaxaca. So my house is in Oaxaca. So I have a house in the United States, but I
right?
also have a house in Oaxaca as well. So
Okay.
I bought in Mexico.
Okay.
And so so I just joined. So, because I was like, this is fantastic. Initially, I was actually looking to do an exchange with people because I'm in Oaxaca City. So I was looking to exchange with people in Huatuco. And then that's when I came across this site and I was like, oh, I can go anywhere in the world. So next
Wow.
summer, wherever someone wants to exchange, I'm ready to do it. I build my points through my American Express Delta card. So generally speaking, the trip should not cost me anything absorbent once I've taken care of the lodging and I've taken care of the flights.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's my
That's
advice to
amazing.
people. Utilize your resources. If you're gonna travel, get yourself at least I have an American Express Hilton card as well. So it's same thing when I go to different places in Mexico. I've got a favorite one, even in Puebla. I use my points. So I have not yet paid cash for any stay in different places in Mexico so far, because I've just been using my Hilton points. And now my next step is the home exchange. So I say this to you to say that thinking about the resources that you have and
Hmm.
how you can exchange them is a big part of making this work. It doesn't
Yes.
require all this money, and having a lot of money honestly just means you're just taxed more. So having a lot of dollars or pesos is not an exciting thing because 30% of it's going to go out to somebody. So really what you're looking for is how can you devise your life in a way where, and I'll tell you, the book I read, 2008, Wealth Without Risk, is by a gentleman named Charles Givens. And that's actually how I've fashioned my life since then. The idea is that your business is your life, therefore it's tax deductible.
Yes.
And so therefore, you're not looking at traveling and exploring and all of that like it's oh my gosh, it's so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually saying to yourself, okay, I do this, I know how to do that, XYZ, how do I make it work?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I go without compromise? I don't compromise. I
Right.
will go to the backwoods. I have been in probably too many backwoods. I've called my children and said, look, I'm going here. If you don't see me, the will's up to date, so I've done that. And it's fine. Um, but I don't compromise when I go places. I don't, say, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. I still do all of the stuff, whether it's the tours, go to the different places, eat the foods. But I don't spend an outrageous amount of money. So the reason I was sharing with you the Ecuador story was because Ecuador taught me like a lot. It taught me about thinking about, okay, health.
Yes.
Things come up health-wise that you just wouldn't imagine. Am I ready for that? Travel insurance, I have insurance in Mexico now, so it's not a thing for me. And my insurance covers me if I go anywhere in the world for up to 3 months.
Right.
So insurance wise, I'm fine. But I believe in travel insurance. It can turn on like a simple thing into a nightmare, like you're not being let out of the hospital because you can't pay. So
Mm-hmm.
it taught me that. It taught me, and that's kind of why we came up with La Soleil that I mentioned to you, our space. So as a traveler, as a business traveler, because I've worked online the entire time, I would go places and I'm a veteran of like crazy in places. I have done the hot water that burns you when you go in and then you've got to step out for a second and it gets cold and then you go back in, so I've done that. I've done the cords are different and my husband's got a computer, I've got a computer, kids have computers, we've got USBs, and we have got to go and buy basically things to make this all work. And then we end up blowing the electric because we are using too much electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I've been, as someone who spent 3 to 6 months in different countries and spent the whole first month trying to figure out where's the laundry, where's
Right.
just the little things. I just felt like it was such a waste of time.
Yes.
I mean, I would have much preferred to spend that month really getting to know the place. So when we conceived of La Soleil, it was to be exactly that. Obviously, people come and they stay with me short term in Oaxaca, but most of my guests will be there anywhere from 1 to 3 months.
Oh,
Because
wow.
we take care of everything for them because it's 3 full apartments. So I have the full kitchen and, kind of all the stuff. And they're very
Tell us a
separate.
little bit about that because I think there's a few elements here that I think our audience is very interested in. People
Yes.
are always asking, how do you sustain your life? What do you do to make money? And also, of course, the other concern is health, which is you were just talking about the health
Yes.
insurance. So it would be great if you can share your health insurance information, and I'll put it in the show notes. But tell us a little
Okay.
bit about how you came to decide how you're going to sustain yourself with your business. Why did you decide to create a sort of tourism business? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So that is an excellent question. That brings us to another country, Panama. So we're living in Panama and we are probably behaving shamefully because at that point I had a really large contract as a project manager and we were just shameful. We were buying this and that and eating here, there. I unfortunately was not thinking about the money. Like my money philosophy now was not then. So in the midst of this high life living, I lose the contract. because the person who had hired me, the VP, gets fired. And I was an independent contractor, and my contract said, which I'll never do again, my severance was only 3 weeks. I've never done that since. I will not sign anything that's less than 3 months of a severance. And so now we're sitting in Panama and money has gone, right? Because we just spent it. Now we
What was
had
your
our
work? Sorry,
house.
what was your contract work?
Oh, I was a project manager for web design for a multinational company.
Okay.
So I was, talking to the people in England, and I was kind of the liaison between the folks in England and the folks in California.
Okay.
So I got to learn fun words like bespoke, still one of my favorite words. I love that word. So it was really interesting because you're speaking English, but the English is different. So I
It
was
is.
speaking to one and I was like
I have a lot of people say
translating.
that to me.
Yes, yes. And it was like the lift. And so it was funny because I would say to myself, I'm hearing British English in this ear, and then the American English is coming out of this ear. And then I would translate it for the Americans. But I love language. So, I mean, for me, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And given that my parents are immigrants, I grew up in New York hearing all these different accents, the Caribbean, the Indian, the Italian. So growing up in New York, your ears are very attuned to accents.
Right.
So you're very good at what words someone is trying to say. Like it's almost instinctual. So I don't need someone to say a word presumably phonetically correct to me, because my mind gives me the whole range of the phonetics.
That's a great skill to have.
Yeah, I had no idea I was learning that skill as a kid. It's so useful even here when people are speaking English with a Spanish accent. I completely get it. So we're in Panama and we realize we have to go back to the States because, and I had bought a car at this point, so we were thinking that Panama might be it. And I remember my husband and I talking, and we had said to ourselves, what's the lesson here? Because there was a lesson, because to go from 6 figures to 0, that's a big thing. And the lesson was, the reason they call income streams of income is because there should be more than one.
Right.
And one of those streams should be in the country that you're living in.
Right.
And so at that point, we made the decision that whatever country we would settle in, we were going to start a business. We didn't know what just yet. So it wasn't, we didn't have kind of a, what is it? But we knew we were going to do it. That was a kind of a principle.
Right.
So when you talk about money, and you're talking to the right person, because I have no problem being 100% honest about the money. So I bought a home here in Mexico, and I explored all the different options to purchasing this home, including mortgages, including fintech. And eventually we settled on, it was a seller financing. Now the seller financing, so he financed for us at 0%. I can tell you right now that that's probably not happening. So you're hearing me say this to audience, but yeah, I wouldn't want you to think that you can go in and recreate that.
Right.
These just happen to be a very specific circumstance. We bought during COVID when no one was buying, and everyone was scared. They didn't know how long things were going to go. So here we come along saying, look, I'm going to give you this much cash and I'm going to need to pay this off over 2 years. We were offering a great deal. Today, that's not I don't know anyone who's going to accept that deal from you, and they're not giving you a 0% interest rate. So I completely recognize that my deal was just an outstanding deal.
Right.
Then the renovations came, because it required a complete gut renovation. Beautiful bones, very strong foundation. And the thing is about Mexico, which is very fascinating to me, people say, oh my God, so cheap. So we have to put cheap out of our minds. It's almost like a drip feed. It's like, okay, you tell me, hey, how much a tile's going to cost? And you're like, oh, it's going to cost the equivalent of 3,000 USD. And I'm like, all right, no problem. That's great. And then you come back and tell me, oh, well, I have to get the grout now. Oh, but I've got to get the sealant now. And then by the time I turn around, we're easily at 5,000, which is close to, it's not, at first you think to yourself, maybe I'm at 50% less, but you're probably closer to 25%.
Yeah,
and
that's such a good point, because I think there is a huge misunderstanding about the cost of living in Mexico, and certainly when it comes to construction and materials and everything that you're talking about. I renovated a property in Puerto Vallarta, and the story you're giving me, I absolutely had that situation multiple times, and
yes,
it's so easy to fall into that trap where when I did my rooftop, for example, I got 3 or 4 quotations, and and the quotation I went for, I thought was great. I was like, okay, this is it. And then, of course, like you said, a few months
mhm,
later, it's like, oh, well, we didn't quite buy enough of this, so we need to buy
yeah.
some more. And actually, we discovered that really the wood is not the best way to go. We think we should do steel. And actually now we need another month for it. And before you know, it's like literally double the price. And I think
Yes,
that the way things happen are very different. Even like what you just said about the financing as well. I'm just about to create a eco village here, and the we have been negotiating with the landowner, and they have agreed to 6 month payment, which is which
excellent.
is great. And like you say, that is not it's difficult to get either financing or to get payments or installments. But I think it's important for people to know that, you look at every single option. Like, don't just
Yes,
stay in that box that, in the US, where the only option to buy property is a mortgage or financing or,
gosh, yeah,
savings or whatever. I think you have to be prepared to really think outside the box for creative solutions, right? So,
yes,
and that's a good example that you had there, that you're going to start a business, but you're like, well, okay, I want to start a business, but we don't have the money just to buy a place. So how did you decide the business, and how did you decide how to create that business? What was your starting point in terms of your business idea?
so it was really just us, right? We were thinking we're not so unique. There are people who, and mind you, when I started remote work, it was 2000, and I think was 2008. So it was at a time my parents were looking at my husband like, what have you gotten her into, right? They just thought this work from home thing was like nuts. Did not make any sense to them
Mm,
whatsoever.
mm, mm.
So we were remote workers before remote workers were a thing.
Right.
But we started recognizing that it was growing. And so people needed more than just a hotel room, but they needed a space where they could really kind of do their business. And for me, it was get to things quickly. Like I said, it was very selfish of me. I am at an age where I have no interest in going on vacation and fixing my bed. I just don't. That's just not my thing. I don't want to wash dishes. Like, I'm
Right.
just not doing that, And
Yeah.
so I'm past that. I've washed dishes for decades. I'm done. And so for me, it was, okay, how do we create a space that was very catered to somebody like me, that we're catering to our guests. We take the laundry to the laundry for them. We go to the supermarket for them if they want. We'll take them to the supermarket. It is a very, either we'll do it for you or we'll take you.
Right.
You don't have to learn kind of the neighborhood if you're only there a month or two.
Right.
You want to go down to Oaxaca. I mean, we have parades all the time. There's always a calenda. There's always a party. There's so many places to see and do. The idea that you're going to spend your time just trying to figure out where to do your laundry is a waste. And so that was the initial catalyst for the space.
Mm-hmm.
Just, but authenticity also mattered. So we are and I guess being in Mexico, no matter where you are, it has to be authentic, right? Because we're actually here. But in our case, we are in a like traditional Mexican neighborhood.
Right.
No one speaks English
Right.
except for us. No, they're very good though. My neighbors, I bless them. They are so good to all my guests. They absolutely pull out their phones for Google Translate, and the whole neighborhood acts like my guests are their guests. So it's actually a really beautiful kind of thing. We're all in it together.
Right.
But it is a very authentic Mexican experience.
Beautiful.
And so like I have a panderia at the corner, you know, ice cream shop right around the corner, the lavanderia. We have our own mercado. So it's a very real, I go do all I need. And then the gym is across the street. And so for me, I thought about myself. I'm working, but I'm on vacation. What does
Right.
that mean? That means that I don't have time to really make my breakfast really. Like if somebody can just go get it for me, I'm just going to pay them to go get it for me.
Right.
As soon as I finish working, I want to go.
Yes.
And I would love to have somebody have a taxi waiting for me to go where I want to go.
Right.
And I don't have time to research where to go here. Nope. I just want someone who I can say, hey, I'm looking for the things to do tonight. Where do I find it? And someone sends it to me. So it was the space, but it was also the service around it. And to your point, when you talk about the eco village, a year ago, so I've been in Oaxaca 4 years, and I have watched the rainy season get shorter. It's the craziest thing because I haven't even been here that long, and I've watched it get hotter,
Right.
and I've watched it rain less.
Right.
And about a year and a half ago, my husband and I said, this is not sustainable, right? We're buying water pipes, and this doesn't really make sense. What are we gonna do? So
Yes.
that's when we started kind of transforming the house to add the different elements like I told you about. So we have a water filtration system, water capture and filtration. So we
Right.
do rainwater capture. We have solar water heaters. And the next thing is we're adding the solar panels that we're going to attach to the air conditioning. So
Brilliant. Brilliant.
the goal is by next year, this time to be, we're still in the urban center because we're 10 minutes walking to Central, but we want to be 100% off grid. So that when you stay with us.
So I like right now, it's so important. So
yes,
there's a few things that I just want to emphasize to our audience. We're coming to
okay.
the end of the interview, and I want to make sure that we get your information for our audience
Okay.
members. But the important things that you just said was that, when you're creating a business, think about what is it that your audience actually wants. And so what you did is you said, okay, these are the things I want to be able to just land in a strange place in Mexico, and I want this all to be laid out for me, so I don't have to worry about where's the laundrette, where do I go shopping, what are the must-see attractions. So I love that you have created a business where people can literally land, and they can just land and run, and you're going to serve them with all the local knowledge and everything that they need. So I think that's so important. Please share, what is the name of your business, your website? How can people find out information about you?
Okay, so it's La Soleil. So it's LASOLEY. We have our website. So it's www.lasoley.com. And you can read all about us there. You can read the reviews. The reviews are 100% from our guests. Read our Google reviews. I appreciate my guests because they actually take the time to write some really long, detailed reviews, and that's nice.
That's great.
To really let you know what their experience is. And I'm not pushy on reviews. I tell people, you can do it, but I don't want them to feel like they have to say anything one way or another. I do take constructive criticism very well. So if there's a criticism, I look at it. And yeah, they can find me there. And so really quickly before we go, I mentioned to you that, I'm always doing 50 million things. I'm like a typical Caribbean. So my other jobs are, I have a podcast, Siesta with Suki. In my case, siesta means hang out with, not sleep.
Right.
I know siesta means sleep in Spanish. And I do talk to guests very specifically about the money and what they kind of do in Mexico. And my guests are actually not all foreigners. My guests are like a mix of Mexican nationals and foreigners as well. So I'm working on my Spanish so I can start doing some of my podcasts in Spanish.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yes,
amazing.
I'm taking I speak Spanish well enough, but I think my grammar is not where I'd like it to be. So
and what are the two, there's a website for those sites, or are they also through this same website?
No, so Siesta with Suki is on YouTube. So it's Siesta with Suki, SUKI. And then you just, you find me there, and I'm pretty good about kind of doing the topics. So sometimes I touch on heavy topics like the migrants, Here in Oaxaca, we did one on Tumen, just the monetary exchange that happens here in Mexico. So a lot of even my philosophies and things come from my guests.
Oh,
And
great.
so I learn a lot from them. So I really appreciate it.
Okay, so Siesta with Soli, yes?
With Suki,
With Suki, Siesta with
See,
Suki,
Siesta with Suki,
and
La Soleil,
lasoli.com.
lasoleil.com. Yes.
Okay, all right. So I have a feeling we're probably going to be having a lot more conversations, but for
Okay.
now we're drawing to a close. So
Okay.
I'm sure that our viewers would love to connect with you, and they can do that via your website,
Yes.
lasole.com. Yes.
That is correct. Yes.
And they can listen to your podcast show. The best place is Apple or Spotify or
No, it's
website.
literally just on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah,
Okay.
I sit with my guests. I actually have a podcast room at La Soleil. So for anybody who wants to do a podcast, I actually help them develop their podcasts and shoot it and do. I'm the full service person. You come to me and I'm like, I will take care of you.
So if you're
So
wondering about what work you're going to do and how you're going to have those multiple ways of earning income, then you're going to be the girl to help people think about all
yes.
their options.
And that's exactly what I do that for so many people. When we talk it through, and I'm like a Jeopardy person. I know a little bit about everything. So between AI and developing like apps and things like that, so we can get very technical you're kind of somebody who works with your hands,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us.
Mhm.
And you can find Suki at latsoleil.com. And
Yes.
I know we're going to be talking really soon. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.
Ciao.